We are going to jump right into it. We are streaming. Wonderful. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Okay, so first things first, let me make sure my mouse is working here. Okay, raise your hands. Who found this assignment to be pretty difficult? Raise your hands, put it in the chat. Yes. Exercise programming is super challenging, but we are going to make it simple for you all. We are going to give you principles that you can use so that programming is fun, it is simple, and it is effective. Then we are going to go over our assignments. So we'll go over themes that we saw. We are going to review how to find that estimated 1 rep max. I know a lot of you were mentioning that you wanted to go over that. So we're going to review it so we can kind of make sure that everyone is on the same page. We need everyone to be clear with how to do that. So when I say eyes open, ears on, everyone has to really buckle in and pay attention so that we make sure that we walk away today and know how to get these values. Okay, so first things first, we need to address movement barriers. I think as allied health professionals, we are super awesome at being the hype man or the hype woman for our patients. I think we do a really good job at bringing that fitness forward approach and boosting our patients' confidence. Where I think we need to work on more is figuring out what the barriers are, right? Like if there are these brick walls that are separating our patient from a psychosocial and physical healthy lifestyle, we need to know what those brick walls are, right? Because we need to get our sledgehammers and we need to help break them down, okay? So if our patients have difficulty getting to their PT appointments or getting to a gym because they don't have transportation, my goodness, day one, we have to be addressing that. We have to be preparing our patients to be able to access fitness. So we need to figure these out, and we really need to figure these out day one. So my call to action for you all is ask your patients, what is the biggest barrier that you see to being successful with this program? Or even something like, what do you foresee is going to be a really big barrier to completing your home exercise program? We need to know that, right? Like we need to know which freaking brick wall we are going to bring a sledgehammer to, so we can start chipping away at that immediately, okay? So we want to hear from you all. What are you hearing out there from your patients, from your clients, about what the really big barriers are that they have to exercise, to HEP adherence? What are you all seeing? Yes, chronic pain. Man, that's a really, really, really difficult one, Helen, absolutely. Equipment, accessible gyms. Yep. Self-efficacy, 100%. Patient motivation and buy-in, especially in acute care, mindset, motivation, transportation, pain, motivation. Seeing a lot of motivation here. They haven't found anything that's fun, no history of exercise. Yeah, accessible gyms. Christina, I just had a previous student of this course reach out to me about my gym to see if it was accessible so she could pass clients off. I love that. Absolutely. Go get into a stave off coming to a town near you. Right. So there are so many things, right? It was so easy for you all to just rapid fire put in the chat what these barriers are. So sometimes we need to think that removing a barrier is actually going to be the best way to start creating really good habits. It's going to be the best way to make the easy choice or the right choice, which is exercise, the easy choice. So something to keep in mind, ask your patients about what their barriers are tomorrow. All right, so something else that we want to put front of mind for you all when it comes to programming. We are giving you permission to be silly and have fun. My goodness, it took one course of me teaching with Ellen Seppi to realize that, oh my goodness, people love to be playful. We love it. We just don't allow ourselves to be playful. As clinicians, I think we have a really hard time allowing ourselves to have fun. And if we have a hard time allowing ourselves to have fun, we're going to have a hard time allowing our patients to have fun. So I think we need to allow ourselves to be playful first, and then give that permission to our patients. The wonderful thing about being playful and having fun is that it makes people better. It makes our clients better. It helps them adhere to their exercise program. So this was a really nice review that looked at things like virtual reality and exergaming, so like using the Wii, and they found really, really wonderful outcomes. So they get better, they have fun, they're more likely to stick with a program. That is a win, 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 win. So my second call to action for you all tonight is allow yourselves to be playful and add in some fun to your sessions. Okay, enough playing around. Now we're going to get serious. See what I did there? Jeff, did you enjoy that joke that I just made? Awesome. Thank you. Okay. All right. So we are going to go into our assignment review, and we are going to start with our formula. Thank you, Lindsay. I was like, man, I'm going to say a joke tonight. I don't know if it's going to be Jeff worthy, but I'm going to try. Okay. This is our formula. You all were already introduced to this in week 3. So make it meaningful, load it, dose it. Guys, this is simple. These are the basics that we have to be able to know how to do. I know a lot of you are thinking, like, how the heck can you make something so complex, seemingly complex, into 3 simple steps? I promise you, once you have this nailed down, programming becomes incredibly simple. Your lives are easier and your patients are going to get better. I promise you. So when we think of like, but why is this complex? Why did this assignment give me such a headache? 2 main reasons. 1, PT school or OT school did us freaking dirty, you all. School did us dirty. They did not teach us how to do this well. And it's so frustrating. It makes my blood boil. They didn't teach us how to do it. And then we went out on our clinicals and our CIs didn't know what to do. We just followed what our CIs did. And what were our jobs? That's reason number 2. Our jobs were to become really, really good at being really, really busy. Our jobs were not to become good at the basics. We weren't set up for success, but we are all here now, and we are going to make this simple for you. Okay. I'm looking at what Christina said. Many OTs tell us they didn't even get an exercise prescription lecture at all. Terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying, right? But they told us we were going to be exercise experts. Not really. But it's all right, because we're going to make it simple for you. Okay, so where does it start? It starts with making it meaningful. That is step 1. If we don't do this well, nothing else matters. This is the most important part. If we dig into meaningful goals, those goals become our exercise selection. We look at those demands that are required to reach that really, really meaningful goal, and it makes our exercise selection super easy. The job is done for us. Then we load it. We find a way to load it. We think about what type of load. We think about where to load it. The answer is always load. You can always find it around, I promise. And then lastly, we dose it. So we have to add the intensity piece in. That can be the most challenging part, but like I keep saying, we're going to make it easy for you. So if we start with talking about make it meaningful, we need to get rid of these superficial goals. These are BS. They give us no valuable information. It is never about reducing pain. Our patients are never coming to us just to reduce pain. It's what is on the other side of that pain. What are they going to be able to do when they don't have that pain anymore? It's never just get stronger. That doesn't tell us anything. Why do they want to get stronger? Betty, if you were strong and healthy and resilient and you're doing something you love with the people that you love the most, what are you doing? What are you able to do? Who are you doing it with? I want to visualize it. Put it in my brain. That's how deep that you want to get. Once you can visualize a goal to that level, you know exactly what you need to structure for their exercise program. Return to PLLF. We say at ICE that baseline is BS, and we say it across the board for all divisions. Individuals, their prior level of function is what landed them in the hospital in the first place. So we need to be thinking about moving them far, far beyond their prior level of function. So remember this, you guys. This is a quote from Jeff Moore. I don't remember what podcast he put it on, but it stuck with me. He says, superficial goals lack emotional connection. An emotional connection is what motivates people. Emotional connection is what motivates people. We have to connect with our patients in that way. That is how we are going to help change their lives. So if we go a little bit further and we look at exercise selection from our goal, this is what we come to. This is how simple it can be. If our patient's goal is to pick up a laundry basket, like you all worked with Anna with your case studies, then the exercise we want to be programming is a deadlift. If it's stand up from a booth in a restaurant, so this individual can go back out to their favorite restaurant with their family, then we know we're going to be wanting to do a squat. But we know that we're going to be wanting to do a squat from a certain height, right? A low seat. A mini squat's not going to do that. If the goal is to carry a certain amount of weight, a grandchild, a bag of mulch, we know that we're going to want to be adding loaded carries into our programs. The more specific you get with your goal, the more easily you can structure your exercise selection. They should look exactly the same. So if we think about Anna's case study, and we want to see an example of a nice goal that is really specific, this is a great example. Patient is able to ascend and descend 15 steps while holding a laundry basket weighing 10 pounds or more, with pain no greater than 2 out of 10 in bilateral knees in order to perform functional activities within her home. Lovely. It's very specific. We're going to know when we have hit that goal. It's specific for rehab, and we can measure this, right? I can visualize what this looks like. You could even get more specific here. Are we holding a laundry basket with 2 hands? Do we have 1 hand on a rail? I mean, you can even dive deeper and deeper into this to where you're asking Anna, like, explain to me exactly every single step that it takes for you to do your laundry, because I want to know exactly what it looks like. You could go even deeper than this, but this is a wonderful, wonderful example of a very specific goal that's going to put us in a good spot to develop a meaningful plan of care. All right, so these few principles here are what we want to really emphasize to you all when it comes to programming. And the theme here is do less better. Do less better. So first, if we talk about our exercise selection, when I was grading several of your assignments, some of you made comments on others' programs and you were like, man, that program is so simple. I wish I would have only done a few exercises versus trying to come up with so many. I made it more complicated. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is beautiful, because that's what ends up happening. We end up trying to fill our programs with so many exercises that they end up like filler. When really, if we were to just dial it down to 3 to 4, it makes our lives so much easier. It keeps us focused on what the goal is. So for Anna doing her laundry, we already talked about a deadlift, right? Climbing up and down stairs, maybe doing an overhead press if she's lifting a laundry basket up above her head. I mean, 3 movements right there. And we're comprising the majority of the functional movements that are required for that goal. My call to action for you all tomorrow is when you are structuring your session with your patient or their HEP, do not prescribe more than 3 to 4 exercises. It's going to be tough, but that is my challenge to you all. Okay, next, progress with scaling versus changing everything up. We don't need to do a different workout or different movements constantly. We can keep the same movements, the same AMRAP, the same EMOM, and we can progress by adding volume or changing up the ratio of work to rest, right? Or changing up the environment. We can scale in those ways versus thinking we have to come up with new things constantly, right? Like, make your lives easier. And besides, think about it. Our patients aren't going to just want to do a workout once and then do something different every single time. Like when I started trail running and I was training for this half marathon, I did the same trail several times over because I wanted to feel like I was successful. I wanted to get better at this one really hard thing. If I kept switching up my training, that would have been really tough on me. I wouldn't have gotten that positive affirmation of like, I crushed it this time. I'm getting better. So think about that for your own selves too. Give your patients that same ability to feel like, all right, my second time around on this one, I did a lot better. We want to create those opportunities. And then next, we need to think about our warm-ups. We need to make our warm-ups intentional. It's not just throw someone on the new step for 10 minutes while we document, eat a snack, finally go to the bathroom so we don't get a UTI. Believe me, I get it. We've all been there. However, we can use a warm-up in a very intentional way to where it's preparing our patients for the workout. So instead of thinking, well, I have to have a new step or a bike or a treadmill interval for 5 minutes, what if you just went over the movements they were going to do in the workout? So it's a movement prep versus a warm-up. The beautiful thing about focusing on those 3 things is that you get to document less. Hallelujah. We get to document less. When we are more efficient and we are focused with our programming, we are dialed in, we don't have to type as much. When we do less better, we get to document less. That is giving time back to ourselves, right? We love that. That is go get your snack. Finally, go eat something, have a sit, meditate for a few minutes, go to the bathroom finally. Whatever it is, you get time back to yourself. So let's look at an example of how we can make warm-ups more intentional. So I talked about movement prep. Well, what else can we do if we're going to kind of use a treadmill or an erg or something like that? Instead of just, okay, Betty, see you in 5 minutes. I'll be over here. Man, make Betty do intervals. And she's going to get toasty after those 5 minutes. She is going to be very, very ready to exercise. It's going to be well worth her time. You can introduce her to really high intensity, and it's something safe. It's on a bike. It's on a treadmill. It's a really wonderful way to introduce high intensity. So you can have a 5-minute warm up, and you can do a 1 minute, just get those legs spinning, get some blood flowing, and then do 30 seconds of really high intensity, like RPE 6 out of 10. And then you can alternate it with 30 seconds at a lower intensity. That is a very, very skillful and worthwhile 5 minutes of Betty's time. Y'all, where is everybody tonight? Oh my gosh, I feel like I threw everyone off because I didn't say anything. Oh my goodness. Okay, I don't know who M. Cabu is, but you are the winner. You do not have to do 10 burpees. Man, Brittany, I feel like you got it last time. You were close. All right. Let's hit it, everyone. I'm doing 5, and they're going to be modified. Ooh. Okay. Whew. All right, nicely done. Okay, this is beautiful. Will, this is just poetry. I feel like the pressure to justify skilled care leads to a lot of this superfluous complexity in skilled care. If we do the same 3 to 4 movements every session, clinicians feel like their care isn't skilled enough to justify. But the skill is in coaching the simple things well. Absolutely beautiful. Put it on a plaque, hang it on your wall. That is exactly what we are talking about. If we focus on doing the basics incredibly well, that is going to be what actually changes patients' lives. Absolutely beautiful. So speaking of trying to always come up with new exercises and getting into those fillers, I just want this to put this here for you guys for a reference, because these are the ones that we see constantly. Bridges, clamps, sideline hip abduction, long arc quads, right? The list goes on. These are kind of those repeat offenders that we constantly see in programs that many times are not necessary. I want to make it very clear. It's not that these exercises are bad. These are appropriate for some individuals. The problem is that they are prescribed to the masses when they are only appropriate for very few. Our brains want to go to autopilot. This is stuff we learned in school. This is what we've seen out in the clinic. When we are exhausted and we have that patient and we've been back to back all day long, we're hungry, our blood sugar is low, and you're like, I just don't know if I have the cognitive energy. I'm just going to revert to what's on that Therex sheet. And it looks like a lot of these exercises. I am challenging you to stop yourself in that moment. Stop yourself in that moment. Take a breather and try and think beyond this, right? If you were like, oh man, okay, I'm just going to do bridges. Can your patient deadlift? What if you leveled up that bridge? What if you added a weight to it and did a single leg bridge instead? It's that simple of improving your habits to choose the better choice, right? Something that simple, the 1% difference of when your brain wants to go to autopilot, when you're in clinic tomorrow. I want you to think beyond. Take a breather and try and come up with something better. Okay. All right. So let's get into a few assignment examples that we have here. First off, we saw a ton of stretching. So we need to ask ourselves, is stretching worth it? We know that as we get older, our hips, our spine, our ankles are going to lose range of motion. 20 to 30% on average. Our ankles are going to lose like 30 to 40% on average. So do we want to be working on mobility? Yes. However, stretching, static stretching in particular, may not be the biggest bang for our buck, right? Static stretching has not been shown to promote healing or prevent injury. So maybe it's time to ditch it. So with this program, instead of a static hip flexor stretch or a gastroc stretch, what are some ways to make that a little bit more dynamic? I think we touched on this last time too, but throw out some examples to make hip flexor stretching and gastroc stretching a little bit more dynamic. Yeah, lunges, step backs, lunges with overhead reach. I love that. Absolutely. Lunges, heel raises. Yep. So wonderful. Taking a static stretch and making it more dynamic. The other thing, the way that I love to hack this, a lot of my clients love yoga. They're yogis. I know that just doing slow flow yoga is not going to get them super strong, but they love it. They feel like they get a really great stretch. So I'll get them down in a plank position, maybe have them do a plank, a downward dog. I mean, they're getting some really nice stretching in their shoulder. They're getting some stretching through the posterior chain, but they're also working on stability and bracing. That's a strong position to be working, right? You're getting them close down to the floor as well. If people are a little afraid to get down to the floor, you're kind of using graded exposure there. So doing some yoga poses are a wonderful way where you can be working on strength sneakily, but you can be giving the patient the stretch feel that they really, really like. There are some other great examples. Wall push-ups, feet flat. Yes, I love that, Jeff. Banded marching. Yep. Captain Morgan stretch on a step, on and off. Yes, love it. Wonderful. Okay. Next, load. All roads lead to load. Lindsay Huey on this call. One of her quotes that we use now, like every day, load is our love language. Okay. So this is where we need eyes open, ears on. Eyes open, ears on, everyone. Okay. Because we are going to review the dosage here, how to use the AMRAP to get that estimated 1 rep max value, because some of y'all had questions about this. Okay. So this is just a review, but this is how this is going to start. So you're working with Betty. Okay. She's coming in to see you in the clinic. And you're like, okay, I learned about this in Essential Foundations. How do I do this? You're going to pick a weight. All right. I'm going to say 15 pounds because that's the dumbbell that I always have in my car when I see patients, and it tends to be a winner in most cases. And you are going to have Betty do an AMRAP set, as many reps as possible. Ideally, we want, sorry, that's cut off there at the edge. We want failure to occur in less than or equal to 10 reps, because we can get a more accurate value for estimating a 1 rep max. All right. So imagine this. You give Betty that 15-pound dumbbell. You're like, Betty, I want you to send it. I want you to give me as many sit to stands as you possibly can. I don't want you to stop until your legs are about to freaking fall off. You don't need to be that aggressive. I'm just putting that out there for emphasis. We want Betty to work really hard. All right. So Betty starts to rep out her sit to stance. She gets to rep 6, and it looks like, whoo, this is getting tough. 7, man, form is starting to break down. She barely gets up on her 8th rep, and she's like, whoo, I am done. Okay. We know that Betty worked her butt off, right? She put in that max effort. So now we have a value that we can use technology, because math sucks, to get us this estimated 1 rep max. Okay, so everyone take your phones and go to strengthlevel.com. I want everyone to see this. When you go to strengthlevel.com, the top left corner says calculators. Go to 1 rep max calculator. It is going to ask you the weight that was lifted, so that's 15 pounds, and the amount of times that it was lifted, the repetitions. So you put in 8, and then you say calculate. And the magic gremlins in your phone do the math for you. You don't have to do any work. And this is what should come up. You get this lovely, lovely chart that gives you all the values. So what we know is that the minimum threshold for strength adaptations is around that 60 to 65% of 1 rep max. This chart gives you what 60% is and 65%. So you know where you have to start. You know the bare minimum. So then you can base your reps and sets off of your intended stimulus, right? So you know your minimum threshold for strength, and then you can put that to reps and sets. You can get really deep in the weeds with reps and sets, but we know that strength is going to be best. Your adaptations for strength are going to be best seen in that rep range of 1 to 6. Okay. Does that process of using that website and getting that value make sense? Do we have to feed the magic gremlins? You do not have to feed them. They're like bottom feeders. They don't need anything. What was the name of the site? Strengthlevel.com. Christina's got it there for you. I only want you guys to be able to do this in the clinic. Like, try this out with 3 patients this week. Have them do an AMRAP set. Find a weight to try and make sure that they fatigue in 10 reps or under. And you may not get that right away. That's okay. You can try again. Calculate their estimated 1 rep max. Find what that minimum threshold is, and you can start to load from there. 3 patients this week. Okay, everyone take a deep breath. Moving on. Do we need to use like a training max of like 90% so they don't actually fail? When you're trying to find that AMRAP set, you can bring them to failure because we want them to be working at that 10 out of 10 RPE. When you are then dosing for strength purposes, then you're going to bring that down, obviously, right? We're not going to be bringing them to their 1 rep max when we're trying to work on strength gains with them, right? We're not going to over and over again have them do that 90% of their 1 rep max or above. We would drop that down. But for that AMRAP set, heck yeah, bring them to failure or bring them to a point where they almost fail and you see the effort. Their form is breaking down. They can't go through their whole range of motion. 100%. Okay, moving on. So this would be an example of what we could see for an underdosed program. So this is Doris, right? So if we know that Doris's 1 rep max is 6 pounds for squat and deadlift, in this program, we are starting off with 3 pounds, which is only 50% of the 1 rep max. So we have not reached that threshold of strength adaptation. Now, maybe we wanted to underdose on that first day, right? Totally fine. But we really got to move Doris to 60+% quickly because Doris is someone who is probably 1 rep max living. We don't have time to waste to keep underdosing her. So by week 2, we got to be bumping that up and really be trying to push those numbers so that we can start building strength and resiliency ASAP. So look back at your work, you guys. Like when you are prescribing, you're writing up these workouts, just check yourself. You have it there on your phone. It's going to be staring at you. Make sure that you know where your numbers are starting. If you are going to start at an underdosage, that's fine. Just make sure you know why. Is there a justification for that? And know that you're going to want to progress from there pretty quickly. All right, now if we go to the opposite end, what if we progressed too quickly? So in this program, week 1, they were doing deadlifts, 14-inch parallettes, 3x5 at 40 pounds. And then week 2, they increased 2 things. They progressed 2 things, range of motion and load. So we went from deadlifting off of parallettes to deadlifting on the floor, and we added weight. That could be a pretty big jump for some folks. So just know that maybe you want to only progress one of those at a time to help make someone become more successful when you are making something more challenging. Try not to progress too many variables. Again, keep it simple. Choose one variable and progress that before you progress another variable. I'm going to say if this maybe is Michelle, I'm sorry, I don't know if that's your name from your Instagram. I talk to my patients all the time about controlling their variables. So important. Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. I mean, you want, again, simple, do less better. I have to tell myself this all the time for my own feedback for myself. I want you guys telling it to yourself. I want you to hear it in your sleep tonight. I want you to have a dream, and I want it to be about doing less better. Choose one variable to progress, keep everything else the same. Another challenge for you all. Okay, we got to talk about volume. You guys made up some really awesome EMOMs and some AMRAPs. However, I think we get stuck sometimes because we don't actually carry it through to determine how much volume we're actually prescribing. So if we look at this workout, we have 3 sets of 12 squats, right? So we had 36 reps there. Then we have this EMOM. We have an EMOM where it's 3 different exercises only. So that's going to result in us doing 4 rounds, right? 12 minutes divided by 3. So if we have 4 rounds of those 3 exercises, we are now looking at not only 36 squats to begin with, we've got 32 more, then we have 32 step-ups, and then we definitely are going to have probably at least that same amount of forward lunges, because you can do a lot of lunges in 30 seconds. So we have this volume that's at least 132 repetitions of lower body exercise. And this is week 1, day 1. Yikes. This could be a really tough situation where we send Anna home and she is like so sore. She's like, I don't even know if I'm going to come back, right? So what could we do to modify this? Instead of all of these lower body exercises, this is a really great time where you can add in some upper body exercises so the legs don't become so toast, right? So instead of lunges and step ups, you can do, dips off of a chair or overhead press or a chest press, something like that, so that the legs aren't so exhausted. What you could also do is you can make it so that it's more than 3 exercises so that you have less overall volume of those lower body exercises. So it's not just minute 1, minute 2, minute 3. Maybe you add on so that it's like 6 exercises. So you're only getting 2 full rounds of everything. That's another way that you can modify it. All of your programs, we definitely saw the lower body getting hammered, which we love. That's going to make Doris and Anna's legs like total tree trunks. We love it. But we don't want you guys to forget about the upper body. Okay. Upper body is just as important to strengthen as the lower body when it comes to our older adults being able to do meaningful activities. So make sure that you're not forgetting about upper body exercises. So let's look at a program that kind of hit it right in a sweet spot. Okay. This was structured really nicely. We have a really nice intentional warm up here. We have some intervals. We then have some supersets of squats and deadlifts. So we have some strength work here. This is going to be very meaningful for Anna, strengthening those legs to do her laundry. Then we have here where we're going up and down a flight of stairs, in addition to doing a deadlift with a kettlebell. So now, like, you can visualize this, right? deadlifting the laundry basket, walking up and down the stairs. It looks exactly what Annie is going to have to do to complete that task. And then we have a farmer's carry. So again, exactly something that Anna would have to do her laundry. Like imagine she's carrying a laundry basket through her home before she starts to unfold and put away that laundry. So if you want to screenshot one to save as an example, this would be it. It gives you a really nice way to structure not only how she structured the program, what she did first and then next and last, but also the exercise selections that she used and how she combined them to create something that mimics the goal. Okay. We had a lot of questions. So I'm going to skip over the first one because we talked about the EMOM last time. Does anyone have any questions about the EMOM? Was that clear when we discussed it last time? Put it in the chat if you want to go over this first question before we move on. This isn't your last chance, but okay, I'm going to move on. If anything comes up with EMOM, AMRAP, all of that, we can go over it. You guys can have access to ask us questions after this call. This is a lot of info, but let's move on to the second question. So could you please review the traffic lights and their impact on the plan of care? So 2 of y'all asked about the traffic light of exercise, and here it is. So this is wonderful. So this is actually out of a geriatric PT textbook, and one of the authors was our beloved Dale Avers. So this is really nice because it gives you these guidelines of absolute contraindications to exercise, and then relative precautions. And then if you got nothing going on, you're going after meaningful goals. The point of why this is so important is if we look at these red lights, contraindications to exercise, unstable blood pressure, unstable angina, recent MI, complete heart block, acute CHF. How many of you all are seeing patients like this regularly? Put it in the chat if you are seeing these folks regularly who have that stuff on board. Crickets. All of them. Alex, what setting are you in? Yes, I often see them in home health. The red lights. We're seeing the red lights. Is that what everyone's saying? Yes. So these absolute contraindications, some of us are going to see, usually in acute settings, ICUs, the hospital. Some of our home health patients are really freaking sick, right? Like they belong in the hospital still. So we're going to be seeing some of them, but the vast majority of us are not seeing these folks with this stuff regularly. So that's what we want to emphasize, is that for the majority of us, we don't have to put a hard stop on initiating exercise. Okay. What most of us are, Alex, I think I blacked out. I answered incorrectly. I have yellow lights. Okay. Got it. Lauren, I'm usually calling EMS for these ones. Yep. Especially in home health. My goodness. I think I called the ambulance on like 3 people in like a month and a half. It's always a fun day in home health, but it happens because people are getting sent home sicker and sicker. Not a fun day. Okay. So just like Alex said, I have yellow lights. The majority of you all are going to have yellow lights. This is just relative precautions, right? So we don't have to have a hard stop, but we want to consider fear, musculoskeletal injuries, COPD, all of this stuff, the medical complexities that you all are seeing all the time. And this is where our skills lie, because we are able to take these yellow lights, keep complex medical history and symptom behavior front of mind, and we are going to be masters of scale. We are going to modify. We are going to find ways to load and find ways to get these people moving, regardless of what they have on board. Fitness forward providers look at yellow lights and say, hell yeah, I got this. We're going to crush it. Whereas most other providers would say, I don't know, we're staying in the chair, right? This is why you all are different. And then the green lights are, if you have the luxury of treating folks who don't have anything going on, that's where you just get to freaking get after it. So that is what the traffic light of exercise is. Team, would someone throw the link for that in there, or we can post it in the group just so folks have that reference if you guys want to look at that. Okay. Going back. Could you go over AMRAP stats a little more? If you're doing as many reps as possible in a time period, why do you list a number of reps? I understand how to use it to find an estimated 1 rep max, but not how to use it for strength training. So I think, Taylor, I think the confusion there is you're thinking of as many rounds as possible. So an AMRAP can be as many reps as possible. That's what we're going to use to find that estimated 1 rep max value. But if you're doing a workout and it's as many rounds as possible, that's where you're going to give specific reps, right? So it can be as many rounds as possible of 3 burpees, 6 mountain climbers, 9 deadlifts. I don't know if you're on the call, Taylor. Let me know if that clears that up. I think it's just a confusion of as many reps as possible is what we use for the estimated 1 rep max. That's different than when you're like prescribing a workout and you're doing as many rounds as possible. So you could do as many rounds as possible workout and use it for strength training. So you could say 3 deadlifts or 4 deadlifts, right? We're in that 1 to 6 rep range, and we're working at a fairly high percentage of their 1 rep max. So we can still use in as many rounds as possible workout to be working on strength training. Okay, we talked about the traffic light. Stephanie, can you review optimal or suggested rest intervals between exercise sets and within? Let's say you are doing squats 3 by 8. So the answer is it depends, but also rest isn't going to matter necessarily like the reps and sets, right? That's not the important part. The important part here is what is the load that we are using for 3 by 8 and what is the stimulus we're trying to go after, right? So if we're doing 3 by 8 and we are, let's say, so an 8 rep max is 80% about of a 1 rep max. But if we're going to be doing 8 reps of that for a couple rounds, we're going to need a lot of rest. If you're bringing someone to their max, right? We're going to need several minutes of rest maybe if we are working towards strength adaptations and we are using a fairly high percentage of our 1 rep max when we're talking about load. So you're going to want some more rest there. The best way to get an idea of this is actually do it. Pick a lift, find your estimated 1 rep max, and then do several reps of that and do them have a very high load on you and see how much rest you need before repeating that again. And you will understand, okay, if I'm really loading someone up this heavy, they're going to need a few minutes to rest before they can repeat that or repeat something close to that. If you are doing 3 by 8 and you're using a really light load, you may not need a whole lot of rest, right? If your stimulus that you're trying to get is more endurance, then you would want maybe a lighter load for that 3 by 8 so that they could continue to work through and not need a whole lot of rest. So the answer there to boil that down is it depends. It depends how much load you're using. It depends the stimulus that you're trying to achieve. Christina, do you want to speak to that? I saw you just put something.
Yeah. When you're at higher intensities, kind of what Julie was saying, like when you have that load on your back, you're going to feel that you're going to need more time. When it comes to like the research on rest to sets ratios, we're thinking at least 90 seconds in between heavy loads. So that's 3x5, that's 3x8. If we're at the appropriate intensity, we're going to need at least 90 seconds. If our clients are telling us before that they can go again, it means that we're not actually loading them at that intensity. If we're doing it more cardio focused, like Julie said, we might not need as much of that. But when we're working on load, at least 90 seconds. And that's usually when, if my clients feel like they don't want to just sit and rest, I'm getting them doing some dynamic stretching or something in opposing muscle groups to try and get them to rest those muscles to be focusing on their other, like letting those muscle groups that I'm trying to get stronger rest.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, try this out, you guys. Really try and lift heavy, like 5 really heavy reps, and then see how much rest it takes you to be able to go back at it and lift again, just so you get an idea of what that feels like. Okay. When performing high intensity aerobic intervals, recommended work rest ratios and total time, assuming work is at a high intensity, then dropping down to moderate blocks, heart rate, or just what you are able to perform. So we actually speak to this a lot in our live course. The really cool thing about what the literature tells us about high intensity interval training is that you can have really wide range of intervals. So you could have anything from 10 seconds to 4 minutes of really high intensity, like at someone's maximal capacity or near someone's maximal capacity. So 85 to 95% of their heart rate max. And then for a rest interval, the literature will say you can do anything from 0.5 to 3 times of the work interval. And that interval can be complete rest, or it can be an exercise or an activity that is at a lower intensity. So that's great news because we have a lot of wiggle room. We're going to have a lot of folks that cannot do 4 minutes of near max capacity work, but we sure as heck can probably get our folks doing 10 seconds. Okay. We've got more. All right. So William is asking about documentation. So he's getting feedback that he should not document rest times as they are not considered billable by Medicare. Do you know if this is true? If rest is billable time, if it's deemed physiologically necessary to work at a high enough intensity to build true strength? To answer that first question, yes, rest time can be billable by Medicare. I don't work in outpatient, so I do not know the more specific answer to that. But especially if you're taking vitals at that time, 100% that is billable. Oh my gosh, Michelle, what you got to say for us? If you are measuring something, yeah. Those rest times are a wonderful time to monitor vitals, to see what is happening with exercise, or if you're educating during that time. Yeah. Anyone else, team, like Ellen, any thoughts from an outpatient perspective on that? Billing rest time?
In our documentation system that we use, there's never been an audit from Medicare based on whether or not I wouldn't say billed for rest time. Usually that perks up Medicare's ears that we're billing for non-productive time. And I've never had an audit from Medicare, but I would really defer to Michelle's education and documentation experience.
Yeah.
And it sounds like if you're watching this later, she's saying that the only way you can bill that if you're measuring something or educating, but you would just need to document that time.
Yeah. And William also asked bonus points if someone knows where this is outlined in the legislature. I do not know that. Team, anyone on the call, does anyone know where in Medicare guidelines that can be found? I have not a clue. If your patient time, Michelle says, if your patient time is 25 minutes and your flow sheet justifies that time, you don't necessarily need to document your rest time as billable time.
Hey, I just want to chime in, Will here. I feel like it's
thanks.
tricky. I feel very lucky that you're on the call, Michelle. So I'm in the home health setting, but billed under Medicare Part B. So billed under outpatient, but I'm only seeing one patient at a time. So it's not like I'm in a clinic and if I'm having someone do like a 5x5 deadlift and they need to rest like 2 minutes to work at sufficient intensity, I don't necessarily have the option to go see another patient during that time. And also, like, a lot of my patients have dementia or at least kind of mild cognitive deficit where, you know, if I'm resting 2 minutes per set and I'm doing 5 sets, I'm not always confident that I could productively use that as education time. Now, I'll usually at least just take a manual heart rate kind of in rest sets. But again, I'm not doing that for the whole 2 minutes, and I'm not taking, you know, a blood pressure after every set. I'm just reading your response here. RPE, I think that's a great suggestion, Alex. And then also, okay, I mean, but even if the patient wasn't grossly deconditioned, I still would think they would require, I mean, if we want to work at 80 to 90% of 1 rep max, they're still going to need 2 to 3 minutes. And I feel like a lot of home healthers run into this problem because if you're only seeing one patient and you need to work at a high enough intensity to drive strength and you need to rest, like, how are you going to fill that rest time? Because obviously I can't have an hour be an hour at someone's place and only be able to kind of bill 25 minutes per hour, I guess. So that's I'm a new grad. I'm still kind of trying to figure out my workflow here, but I feel like I'm running into this problem.
Yeah, the documentation piece can be really tricky. There are some resources. Tony Meritato, I may be messing up his last name, but he's very, very well known. And when it comes to all things Medicare billing, he is one person on Facebook. He has a whole group about Medicare billing that I would consider. I can put it in the group, the Facebook group, that he may be able to answer those questions. Will, he's very, very responsive and he knows all of the ins and outs of Medicare billing. Yeah. Carl,
awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. He's the dude. He's the man.
What's down?
So Julie, I'll speak a little bit to it. I don't.
Ooh, okay.
So in my I use EMOMs a ton because, like you said, documentation is so much smoother that way. And I will have, you know, one of my minutes of my EMOM is going to be rest, but I might put 1 minute rest and then I have a dash out like spent with patient education or spent covering vitals, or it may just be rest, because when you're dosing appropriately, that rest is truly needed. And so I don't think that that's something that Medicare, and, you know, Tony might be a better person to ask that to, but when you are dosing appropriately, that rest is an indicated necessity. Like, you can't just keep pushing them on. So I think being able to justify the reason you're resting isn't just for you to catch up on stuff and isn't for your patient to just sit there. I think that's when you kind of stay out of trouble with it, is the fact that it's actually a medical necessity that they take a break for a second, because those muscles aren't going to do what they need to do if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll throw Tony's group, the link to his Facebook group in our group. So if anyone has more like specific questions on billing, they can use him as a resource. Awesome. Thanks for all that, all those pointers, Michelle. That was awesome. Thank you so much for that. Okay, it is 9 o'clock, y'all. So to respect all y'all's time, we're gonna say goodbye here. I think we answered, William, your last question about goals, like helping patients reach meaningful goals, right? It's just about digging really, really, really deep and being super curious. You probably heard the word curious like 30 times over the past several lectures. So that's where everything starts, is digging deep with our folks and finding out what is going to bring them joy and purpose in life. If you all have other questions, put them in our Facebook group. This was a really dense lecture and lots of information. We are happy to continue to discuss and answer questions if you guys have anything about this material. But we will end with just giving you a sneak peek of next week. We are moving on to falls prevention. We're going to talk all things learning about how older adults falling and really using that to be our guide to what our plan of care should look like. We're going to talk about balance training and how to make sure that is at the right intensity as well. And yeah, we will see you all next Wednesday. All right, guys, have a good night.
Good work, y'all.